The world is full of mysteries. Some are carved into stone, some swallowed by forests, others drowned beneath the sea. They stand silent, yet they whisper to us stories of people who lived, dreamed, and built things far beyond their time. Over the next chapters, we'll drift through these hidden places together, slowly, gently, like a bedtime journey across deserts, oceans, and forgotten ruins. If you love exploring the strange and the beautiful, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single story. Now, take a breath, let the day fade away, and come with me, because the secrets of the world are waiting. The Bridge of Living Roots. Have you ever walked through a place that feels almost otherworldly, not because of tall skyscrapers or glowing lights or anything modern at all, but because everything around you seems alive, breathing, patient, and ancient? That's the feeling you get when you find yourself in the hills of Meghalaya, far in the northeast of India. This is a land that doesn't rush. The clouds move slowly here, drifting down into the valleys, as if they want to stay a while. The rain doesn't just arrive and leave, it lingers, day after day, month after month, painting the forest in endless shades of green. And hidden in those valleys, if you follow the narrow paths and listen to the rivers below, you might come across something remarkable. A bridge, but not a bridge made by machines, or nailed together by carpenters. This one is alive. A bridge made of the roots of trees. The first time you see it, you might hesitate. It doesn't look like something you're supposed to walk across. It looks like the trees on either side of the river have stretched their arms toward each other, letting their roots twist and braid into a natural pathway. You reach out, curious, and place your hand on it. The bark is damp, rough, cool from the mist, and you realize this isn't just wood that someone cut and shaped. It's still growing. The bridge itself is alive. The people of Meghalaya, the Khasi and Jaintia tribes, have known for centuries that ordinary materials won't survive here. Wood rots in the endless rain. Rope weakens and breaks. Even stone can be swallowed up by the floods. But the forest has its own answers, if you're patient enough to listen. So long ago, the villagers learned to work with the fig trees that grow here. These trees send out massive roots, thick cords that hang in the air before digging into the soil. Instead of letting those roots wander on their own, the villagers guided them. They bent them gently, weaving them through hollow bamboo pipes or wooden frames, encouraging them to stretch across the rushing rivers. It wasn't a project that could be finished in a season, not even in a single lifetime. It took decades, sometimes a century or more. One generation would begin the bridge, and the next would continue it, slowly shaping the roots until they intertwined into a living structure strong enough to carry a person. Imagine what kind of patience that takes. To start something knowing you may never see it finished. To guide a root, day after day, season after season, because you trust that your children or your grandchildren will one day walk across it, and walk across it they do. Farmers carrying baskets of rice, children on their way to school, travelers passing through, in awe at what they've discovered. Each footstep presses gently into the bridge, and the bridge responds, not by wearing down, but by growing stronger. Because unlike steel or concrete, these bridges don't decay with time. They mature, they thicken, they hold more weight the older they get. In one village, there is even a double-decker bridge, 2 living bridges stacked one on top of the other. The lower one carries people across in the rainy season when the waters rise, and the upper one is there, waiting, strong and steady, a second path above the first. Think about that. Not just one living bridge, but 2, carefully woven together over generations. The sound here is unforgettable. Beneath the bridge, the river never rests. It roars during the monsoon, white water crashing against the rocks. But when you stand on the roots, the sound is softened by the canopy above. Raindrops patter on giant leaves. A breeze shifts through the branches, and if you're quiet, you can almost hear the bridge itself creaking faintly, breathing slowly, as though the forest is alive beneath your feet. The bridges are not just useful, they're sacred. They represent a relationship between people and nature that isn't about control but cooperation. The villagers don't see the trees as resources to be chopped down. They see them as partners, allies, companions in survival, and in return, the trees offer something that lasts far longer than anything humans could have built on their own. When you walk across a root bridge, you can't help but think of time differently. You realize that what you're standing on is the result of choices made 100 years ago, and what you see isn't even finished. It's still in progress. New roots are being added, carefully guided by villagers who know they may never see the full result. It's a living reminder that not everything worth building is for today. Some things are built for tomorrow. Now picture the scene at dusk. The mist thickens, curling through the valley like smoke. The bridge glistens with moisture. Children laugh as they run home across the roots, their voices echoing into the hills. A farmer pauses in the middle, resting his basket, looking down at the river before continuing on. And as night falls, the bridge grows quiet again. The roots continue their slow, silent work, stretching imperceptibly, strengthening bit by bit. Even after everyone has gone to sleep, the bridge doesn't stop. It keeps growing, patiently, in the dark. Standing there, you feel small in the best possible way. You realize that this bridge has already seen generations come and go. It has carried footsteps of people long gone, and it will carry footsteps of people not yet born. It's more than a structure, it's a story. A story written not in words, but in wood, and water, and time. And as you think of that, you might also feel a sense of calm, because in a world that so often feels rushed, here is something that insists on patience. Here is something that proves strength doesn't have to be forced. It can be grown, slowly, gently, quietly. So tonight, as you let your eyes close, imagine walking across one of those bridges. Feel the cool bark beneath your fingertips. Hear the rush of the river below. Smell the damp moss and the freshness of the rain. And remember that beneath your feet, the bridge is alive, carrying you gently, safely, surely, across. And maybe in your dreams, you'll wander back there again, to the misty valleys of Meghalaya, where the forest and the people grow bridges together, and where patience itself becomes something you can touch. The lost fortress of Ani. If you close your eyes for a moment, imagine yourself walking across a high plateau, the air dry, the wind sharp, and the horizon stretching out so wide it almost swallows you. The land is golden, open, empty, and then, suddenly, there it is, a wall, a gate, a shadow of something vast and ancient. You've arrived at Ani. Today, it is silent, a ruined city, but once, it was alive. They called it the City of 1,001 Churches, a place so full of art and faith and ambition that it rivaled the greatest capitals of the medieval world. Travelers would come from far-off lands and write of Ani with awe. They described its walls, its cathedrals, its markets alive with the scent of bread and spices. But time has its own patience, and Ani is now a place of echoes. You step through the great stone gate. The walls tower above you, thick, built from volcanic rock, dark against the pale sky. They've stood here for 1,000 years, battered by storms, by wars, by earthquakes, and yet they remain. Not perfect, not whole, but present, waiting. Inside, the city opens up. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, scattered with stones, fragments of buildings that once were homes, once were shops, once held laughter and life. Grass grows between the cracks, wildflowers cling to broken walls. The silence here is not empty, it feels full, like the stones themselves are remembering. Walk further, and the cathedral rises before you. Even in ruin, it commands respect. The walls arch high, like ribs curving upward, reaching for a sky that long ago stole away its roof. Light pours in, unhindered, striking the stone with warmth. If you place your hand against one of the columns, it feels cool, steady, ancient, and you can almost imagine the thousands of hands that touched it before yours. Priests, pilgrims, children, kings. Close your eyes and picture the cathedral as it was around the year 1000. Bells ringing, echoing through the city. Candles flickering, throwing light against fresh painted frescoes. The scent of incense thick in the air. People gathering, singing, praying. This was the heart of Ani, a masterpiece designed by Trodat, the brilliant architect who shaped Armenian churches into forms that inspired Europe for centuries. His work wasn't just stone stacked into place, it was poetry. Now, though, you hear only the wind. It whistles through the cracks, carrying with it the sound of distant birds. And in that sound, there is a weight, a kind of sadness, but also something beautiful, because Ani still breathes, even if faintly. The city once held over 100,000 souls. Imagine the market square, merchants shouting, fabrics from Persia spread wide on tables, baskets of pomegranates, figs, spices, the rich smell of bread baking in clay ovens. Imagine the narrow streets alive with color, horses clattering past, laughter spilling from homes. Ani was not just a fortress, it was a jewel on the Silk Road. But Ani stood on the edge of empires, and edges are never safe. Byzantines, Seljuks, Persians, Mongols, one after another they came. Each time Ani resisted, each time Ani bled. The city would recover, but not without scars. And then came the earthquakes. The earth itself shook, walls cracked, domes split open. Imagine standing inside a church when the ground began to roar, when the pillars groaned, when stone rained from above. Those moments must have been terrifying. And slowly, over centuries, Ani could not recover. By the 18th century, Ani was abandoned, the market silent, the streets empty, the houses crumbling back into earth. Only the walls, the churches, the fortress stood, skeletons of a once living body. Today, when you wander here, you are not just a tourist, you are a guest in a city that remembers more than it shows. Look around, at the Church of the Redeemer, its dome sliced in half by time. One side still upright like a defiant soldier refusing to fall. At the Church of St. Gregory, small, lonely, but still whole. Its frescoes faint, saints staring at you through faded colors. Walk to the edge of the city, where the gorge opens up, and the river flows below. On the far side is Turkey, on this side Armenia, Ani, sitting like a scar between two worlds. And yet, standing there, you might feel something more than sadness. Something like humility. Because this ruined city, though broken, still carries beauty. The grass has softened its edges, the wildflowers bloom where blood once fell. The wind carries away the sorrow, leaving only stillness, and in that stillness, you begin to hear your own breath, your own footsteps, your own heart, as if the city itself is reminding you of the fragility of life, of time, of empires. At sunset, Ani transforms. The stones glow golden, shadows stretch long, and the cathedral seems to light up from within. The air cools, birds return to their nests, the world quiet. If you sit on one of the fallen blocks and close your eyes, you might almost hear the bells again, faint and distant, ringing across centuries. And as night settles in, Ani sleeps once more, a fortress without an army, a city without a people, yet somehow, still alive. Because ruins are never truly dead, they live in memory, in imagination, in the stories we tell. And as long as someone walks here, as long as someone listens, Ani is not lost. Ani endures. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine yourself walking once more through the city gates, the wind at your back, the cathedral ahead, the silence wrapping you like a blanket, each step soft, each breath slow. You are not alone. You walk with history, with memory, with all the footsteps that came before, and maybe, just maybe, in your dreams, the city will come alive again. Bells will ring, markets will hum, and Ani, the lost fortress, will live once more. The desert monasteries of Ethiopia. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a plateau in northern Ethiopia. The air is thin here, crisp, carrying with it the smell of dust, of stone warmed by the sun, of distant fires burning low in village homes. The land around you looks harsh at first. Red earth, jagged cliffs, valleys that cut deep into the landscape like scars. But if you stay a while, if you let your eyes adjust, you notice something else. There is a silence here that feels sacred, a silence so complete it seems to vibrate, as though the earth itself is humming softly beneath your feet. It is here, in the ancient highlands of Lalibela, that the impossible was carved. Walk closer and you will see it, not built, not stacked, not assembled stone by stone, but cut directly from the living rock itself. Entire churches, shaped from single pieces of volcanic stone, sunken into the earth as if they had been revealed, rather than made. At first your mind resists. How could anyone do this? How could hands, with only chisels and hammers, create cathedrals, not by construction, but by subtraction, carving downward, sculpting the mountain into sacred space? The most famous of them all is the Church of St. George, shaped like a cross. From above it appears almost like a symbol carved into the land itself. You descend along narrow trenches, the walls of rock rising higher on either side, until suddenly the church stands before you, tall, perfect, carved with windows and doors, every detail precise. And then it hits you. This is not a building you walk around. This is a building you enter as though stepping into the earth's own heart. The story of these rock-cut churches is as much legend as history. They say King Lalibela, in the 12th century, had a vision of a new Jerusalem. At the time, pilgrimage to the Holy Land was dangerous, blocked by wars and shifting powers. So he dreamed of creating a holy city here, in the Ethiopian highlands, where his people could worship without leaving their land. And so he began. But here's the part that feels like a whisper of the miraculous. It is said that the king did not work alone. During the day, men labored, chiseling through the stubborn volcanic rock. But at night, angels descended to continue the work, doubling the progress, carving by divine light. In just a couple of decades, though some say it must have taken far longer, 11 churches emerged, each one different, each one a wonder. Step into one and you feel the temperature drop. The air is cool, the walls damp. Candles flicker in the shadows, their smoke painting black stains against the stone ceiling. The sound changes too. Every footstep echoes, every whispered prayer lingers. Monks in white robes chant softly, their voices rising and falling like waves. The space feels alive, not because of its size or decoration, but because it seems impossible that you are underground, surrounded by solid rock, standing inside something made by human hands and yet, somehow divine. Imagine the patience it took. Imagine a man striking stone with a chisel, again and again, knowing he would never see the whole church finished, that his children's children might still be carving when he was gone. Imagine the devotion, to spend your life cutting into the earth, simply because you believed the work itself was holy. And yet, these churches are not cold relics, they are still alive. To this day, priests still bless, still chant, still walk barefoot across the worn stone floors. Pilgrims still come, their faces weary from long journeys, their hands trembling as they touch the cool rock walls, tears filling their eyes. The churches are not museums, they are homes of faith. Outside, the sun is fierce. the dust swirls in the wind, the plateau stretches endlessly, dotted with small huts, with fields of grain, with flocks of goats. From above you might pass by without ever noticing what lies hidden beneath. And maybe that's part of the magic. These churches are not meant to dominate the skyline. They are meant to sink into the earth, humble, secret, protected. At dawn, the first light spills into the courtyards, striking the stone until it glows red and gold. The monks rise to chant the morning liturgy, their voices carried out of the trenches into the open air. Birds stir, circling overhead. A pilgrim kneels, pressing his forehead to the ground. The day begins. At night, the sky here is endless. Stars scatter like dust across blackness. The Milky Way stretched so clear you feel you could reach out and stir it with your hand. Down below, the churches rest in silence once more. A candle glows faintly inside. A shadow moves. A priest, praying through the night. The walls stand, as they have for centuries, as they will for centuries more, carved not only into stone, but into the soul of Ethiopia. Walking through Lalibela, you realize that faith is not always about reaching upward. Sometimes it's about digging down, about finding the sacred not above, but within, about shaping the earth itself into a sanctuary. And perhaps that is why these monasteries feel eternal, because they are not just monuments, they are proof of devotion that outlasts kings, outlasts wars, outlasts time itself. So as you drift to sleep tonight, imagine descending one of those narrow trenches, cool stone walls brushing against your shoulders. Feel the air shift as you step inside the church. Hear the soft chant, the echo of footsteps, the silence that wraps you in stillness. Place your hand on the rock, worn smooth by centuries of touch, and know that you are connected, across time, to all who have ever walked here before. And as you breathe slowly, you might feel, just for a moment, that the earth itself is holy, that within stone and silence, there is a heartbeat, and it beats on, steady, patient, eternal, like the rock-cut churches of Lalibela. The spiraling towers of Samarra. Imagine a desert stretching out beneath the blazing Iraqi sun. The air shimmers, thick with heat. The ground is pale and dusty, cracked in places, scattered with stones that have lain untouched for centuries. And then, rising from this endless horizon, you see something impossible, a tower, spiraling upward like a staircase to the sky. This is Samarra, and at its heart, the Great Mosque. Once in the 9th century, it was the largest mosque in the world, a place so vast that it could gather tens of thousands in prayer. Its walls stretched wider than the eye could take in, enclosing courtyards, arcades and fountains. But what makes it unforgettable is its minaret, the Malweya, the spiral tower. Stand at its base, and you feel small. The tower is nearly 50 meters tall, built from sun-baked brick, its spiral ramp wrapping around and around until it disappears into the sky. No straight lines, no sharp corners, just a curve that seems to unwind time itself. Climb it slowly. The path is wide but exposed, the desert wind tugging at your clothes, the ground falling farther and farther away with every turn. There are no handrails, no walls, only the steady curve of brick beneath your feet and the wide sky above. Step after step, circle after circle, your body tires, your breath quickens, but something urges you on, because at the top, the view is like nothing else. From here you can see the Tigris River winding in the distance, fields of green pressed against desert gold. You can see the ruins of Samarra sprawling below, outlines of palaces, gardens, mosques long since fallen. And in that moment you understand why this tower was made, not just for the call to prayer, but as a statement, a symbol of power, of vision, of faith. In the year 8036, the Abbasid Caliph al-Mutasim moved his capital to Samarra. Baghdad was crowded, noisy, restless. Samarra was open, vast, a blank canvas, and so he built palaces with glittering halls, stables that held tens of thousands of horses, gardens that seemed to stretch to the horizon, and at the center, the great mosque, its spiral minaret rising like a beacon. The design was unlike anything before it. Where most minarets reached straight upward, this one wound slowly, deliberately, like a mountain path. Scholars have debated why. Some say it was inspired by Mesopotamian ziggurats, ancient towers that once reached for the gods. Others believe it was a symbol of infinity, a line without end, a prayer without conclusion. But whatever its meaning, its presence is undeniable. Even now, more than 1,000 years later, it stands tall, weathered, yes, scarred by time, by wars, by neglect, but still there. Walk back down the spiral, and you'll notice how the light shifts, bright at the top, shadowed as you descend. The bricks under your feet feel warm from the sun, rough against your soles if you walk barefoot. Each step echoes faintly, as if the tower itself is humming with memory. Inside the mosque grounds, little remains of the once great structure. The walls are broken, their plaster long gone. The vast courtyard lies empty. but if you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. The murmur of thousands gathering at once, the rustle of robes, the call of the muezzin carried high from the spiral, the prayer rising in waves, filling the air like wind over water. And you realize, ruins are not silent, they hold echoes, they remember. There is a strange beauty to Samarra's survival. Empires rose and fell, invaders came and went, wars burned the land, but the spiral tower still winds upward, patient, unbroken. It has watched centuries pass like sand through fingers, and it will likely watch centuries more. At sunset the tower glows. The bricks catch the last light, turning soft gold, the shadows deepening along the spiral. Birds circle above, their wings catching the fading sun. The desert cools, the air shifting from burning to gentle. And for a moment, as you look at the tower standing alone against the wide sky, you feel time slow. The spiral becomes not just stone, but a metaphor, a reminder that life too is a spiral, sometimes climbing, sometimes descending, never truly ending, always turning onward. At night, under the stars, the tower feels even more otherworldly. The desert around it falls silent, the wind drops, and the bricks radiate the heat they held through the day. You could lie down at its base, look up at the endless spiral climbing into the darkness, and feel as if you are staring into infinity. And as you close your eyes, drifting into dreams, you carry with you the rhythm of that spiral. Step after step, circle after circle, rising, falling, rising again, like prayer, like memory, like life itself. The spiraling towers of Samarra, not just a ruin, not just a monument, but a journey carved into stone, winding forever upward. The fire temples of Azerbaijan. Imagine traveling across the windswept plains of the Absheron Peninsula in Azerbaijan. The land feels ancient here, flat, endless, and dry, its soil cracked by the heat, its grass sparse and brittle beneath the sun. The air itself carries a strange smell, not just dust, not just salt from the nearby Caspian Sea, but something sharper, something smoky. And then in the distance you see a flicker, a glow, small at first, then larger, a flame, burning where no torch has been lit, no human hand has struck spark. You walk closer, and you realize, the earth itself is on fire. This is the land of eternal flames. For centuries, perhaps millennia, natural gas seeped from the rocks beneath the Absheron Peninsula, rising silently through the cracks of the earth. When it met air, it burned, not with explosions, not with violence, but with steady flames, golden tongues of fire that licked the ground, danced on stones and burned without fuel, without pause, without end. To the people who once walked this land, these flames were not accidents of geology. They were divine. They were messages, mysteries, signs of gods. And so, on this plain, long before cities, long before oil rigs, long before modern maps, people built shrines, temples not for idols carved of stone, but for fire itself. The most famous of these is the Atezhga, the fire temple of Baku. It does not rise like a grand palace. It is not vast like Samarra, not carved into cliffs like Lalibela. Instead, it is simple, a walled courtyard, 4 sides of stone, quiet and austere. At the center, a small pavilion with 4 arches, standing open to the air. And in that pavilion, on a low altar, burns a flame. Stand there for a moment. The fire sways and curls, its light soft on the stone walls. The air is warm, the shadows dance in rhythm, and you can almost hear the whisper of centuries in its crackle. This flame has been lit in many ages, for many people. Zoroastrians came here first, perhaps more than 1,000 years ago. For them, fire was sacred, a symbol of purity, of creation, of truth. They believed fire carried the prayers of the faithful to the heavens, bridging the human and the divine, and so they gathered around these eternal flames, offering incense, bowing in reverence, feeling themselves close to the sacred. Later came Hindu traders from India, who crossed the Silk Road and found in these flames something familiar. To them too, fire was holy, a messenger of gods, a purifier of worlds. Inscriptions in Sanskrit and Punjabi still mark the walls of the Atezhga, carved prayers that speak of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Some even say that Hindu sadhus once lived here, their long hair flowing, their bodies smeared with ash, meditating by the eternal fire as if the land itself had summoned them to its burning heart. The temple became a crossroads of faith. Persian Zoroastrians, Indian Hindus, Sikh pilgrims, travelers from far-off lands, all drawn by the strange wonder of earth-born fire. In its flames they saw different gods, different truths, but all agreed on one thing: this place was not ordinary. This place was alive. At night, the temple must have glowed like a lantern in the desert. Imagine travelers arriving after long days on the Silk Road, the wind cold, the stars sharp in the black sky. They see the fire before they see the walls. They smell the smoke before they hear the chants. And as they step through the gate, weary and dust-covered, they find themselves bathed in golden light, their faces warm, their hearts strangely calm. For centuries the fire burned, steady, eternal. But time changes all things. Wars came, empires shifted, faiths rose and fell, the Zoroastrians dwindled, the Hindu pilgrims stopped coming, and the temple fell quiet. The flames, too, betrayed their secret. What seemed divine was, in truth, natural gas. When the modern age arrived, with drilling and industry, the earth's hidden veins of fire were tapped, drained, consumed. The eternal flame of the Ateshgah went out. But the story does not end in darkness. In time, the temple was restored. Today, the flame you see there burns once more, not from the ancient veins but from piped natural gas, rekindled as a symbol of memory. Tourists walk its courtyard, scholars trace its carvings, pilgrims still come, some out of faith, others out of curiosity. And though the fire is no longer eternal in the old sense, its meaning lingers. Because when you stand in that courtyard, when you watch the fire curl upward into the night, you don't think of pipelines or geology. You think of all the people who stood there before you. The priests in white robes chanting prayers in ancient tongues. The traders who carried spices and silks across continents. The wanderers who sought warmth in the cold wind. You think of how small your life is compared to theirs, yet how connected, as if the fire itself remembers every face that ever looked upon it. Outside the temple walls, Azerbaijan has changed. Baku gleams with modern towers of steel and glass, its skyline lit by oil wealth, its streets alive with cars and neon. But drive a little distance into the hills, and the old flames still burn. At a place called Yanar Dag, the burning mountain, gas seeps through cracks in the earth and ignites, creating a wall of fire that crawls along the hillside, day and night, like a wound of light in the land. Locals say shepherds once used it to warm themselves in winter, that Marco Polo himself saw it on his travels, and wrote of a fire that never dies. And so, even now, Azerbaijan remains the land of fire, not just oil, not just energy, but something older, something sacred. The Ateshgah is not the grandest temple in the world, not the largest, not the most beautiful, but it holds a kind of magic. The magic of a question whispered across centuries. Why here? Why fire? Why does something so simple, a flame flickering in the dark, draw us again and again, no matter the faith, no matter the time? Stand there long enough, and you might find an answer. Or maybe not. Maybe the flame was never meant to answer. Maybe it was meant only to remind us that there are forces older than us, mysteries deeper than us, and fires we can watch forever without ever truly understanding. As the night deepens and the fire dances on, you close your eyes. You hear the wind in the stones, the soft crackle of flame, the faint echo of footsteps that are not your own. And you realize you are not alone. You are part of a story that has burned for 1,000 years and will burn, in some form, for 1,000 more. The fire temples of Azerbaijan, where the earth itself once caught fire, and faith was born from flame. The castle that floats in the desert. In the silence of the Judean desert, where the air is so dry it seems to drink the moisture from your lungs, there rises a mountain that doesn't quite belong. It is flat on top, steep on every side. A sheer block of stone cut against the sky. From the distance, it looks as though it has been lifted from the earth and left hovering there. A castle floating in the desert heat. This is Masada. The climb begins at dawn, when the shadows are long and the world is still cool. The path winds upward, narrow and twisting, carved by footsteps across centuries. Each turn shows you more of the desert unfolding, the Dead Sea shimmering like glass in the distance, the golden ridges of sand and stone stretching farther than sight. The climb is not easy. Your legs burn, your breath quickens, but then suddenly the path opens, and you find yourself on a wide plateau, standing where kings and rebels once stood. Here, on this lonely mountain, King Herod built a fortress. It was the 1st century before Christ, and Herod was a man who trusted no one, not his rivals, not his allies, sometimes not even his own family, and so he built Masada. High, unreachable, a palace that was also a refuge. Within its stone walls were storerooms, cisterns, barracks, even a bathhouse. Herod filled it with food and water enough to last for years. From here he could look down on the desert and feel untouchable, safe above the shifting sands. Walk through the ruins now, and you can still trace the outlines of his vision. The palace clings to the northern cliff, a series of terraces that seem to hang over empty air. The stones are pale, rough beneath your fingertips, but once they were faced with plaster, painted with deep reds and blacks, mosaics glinting in the torchlight. Imagine Herod walking these halls at night, the desert wind howling outside, the torches burning against the dark, his eyes always searching the horizon for threats only he could see. But Masada's story did not end with Herod. Decades later, it became the last stronghold of Jewish rebels resisting Rome. After Jerusalem fell, after the temple was destroyed, they fled here, men, women, children, carrying with them the hope that maybe, just maybe, this fortress in the sky could be their sanctuary. For years they lived upon the rock, farming in the cracks, storing rainwater in the deep cisterns, keeping watch from the high walls. Below, the desert was their moat, the cliffs their shield. Above, the sky their only witness. And then, the Romans came. From the top of Masada, you can still see the scars of that siege, the outlines of Roman camps etched into the desert floor, the great ramp they built, stone by stone, dragging earth and rock to climb what could not be climbed. Imagine the sound of it, the grind of wood, the clash of hammers, the voices shouting in Latin across the wasteland. Day by day, the ramp crept higher, the fortress more vulnerable. Inside, the rebels watched, knowing the end was near. The story that followed has become legend. When the Romans finally breached the walls, they found no battle, no screams, no desperate clash of steel. Instead, they found silence. Nearly 1,000 men, women and children had chosen death over surrender. They set fire to their stores, they lay down their weapons, and one by one, they left this world on their own terms. The details may be debated, but the memory endures. Masada, as a symbol not just of defiance, but of dignity, of choice in the face of despair. Stand at the edge of the plateau today, and you feel the weight of that choice. The wind rushes up from the desert floor, dry and fierce, tugging at your clothes. The view stretches so far it makes you dizzy. The Dead Sea shimmers like a mirror, the mountains beyond it hazy, ghost-like. In that vast silence, you can almost hear voices, the crackle of fire, the whispered prayers of those who waited for dawn, knowing it would be their last. And yet, Masada is not only a place of sorrow, it is also a place of resilience. Walk among the ruins at sunrise, and the stones glow gold, the desert painted with light. Birds wheel in the sky, their cries sharp against the stillness. The air smells of dust and salt, and for a moment, it feels as though the mountain itself is breathing. Here, at the meeting point of sky and sand, you understand why this place has never been forgotten. Today, thousands climb Masada every year. Some come for the history, to stand where rebels once stood. Some come for the view, to watch the sun rise over the Dead Sea, in a blaze of silver and fire. And some come for something harder to name, a sense of connection, of standing on the edge of time, where the past is not gone but alive, written in stone and silence. At night, Masada is a shadow against the stars. The desert cools, the wind softens, and the plateau lies quiet, its ruins bathed in moonlight. You lie down on the stone, feel its roughness against your back, and look upward. The stars seem close here, close enough to touch, and you think of all who looked at them before you. Kings, rebels, soldiers, wanderers. You are one more in a line that stretches back 2,000 years. The castle that floats in the desert, a place of fear and refuge, of death and defiance, of silence that still speaks. The salt city beneath the mountain. There is a mountain in southern Poland that seems, at first glance, ordinary. Its slopes are gentle, its trees sway in the wind, its villages hum with the quiet rhythm of daily life. But beneath that mountain lies a world so strange, so vast, so beautiful, that to step inside it feels like walking into a dream carved from stone. This is Wieliczka, the salt mine that became a city beneath the earth. The descent begins slowly. You walk down long wooden staircases, step after step, your footsteps echoing in the narrow shaft. The air grows cooler with every level, a dampness seeping into your lungs. The light from above fades until only lanterns guide you, their glow flickering across rough-hewn walls. And then, suddenly, the walls glimmer. Not with quartz, not with marble, but with crystals of salt, sparkling faintly, as though the rock itself remembers sunlight. For more than 700 years, miners carved this labyrinth. Generation after generation, they dug deep into the mountain, not for gold or silver, but for salt, the white gold of medieval Europe. Salt was life. It preserved food. It flavored meals. It healed wounds. In an age before refrigeration, salt was as precious as treasure, and the Wieliczka mine was one of its greatest sources. But this is not just a mine. The deeper you go, the more you realize that miners were not only laborers, they were also artists. They carved not just tunnels and chambers, but entire halls. Walls smoothed into vast galleries, ceilings arched high above, pillars left standing like the bones of the earth. Some spaces are so large, you could fit cathedrals inside them, and in fact, they did. Deep in the mine lies the chapel of St. Kinga, a church carved entirely from salt, the altar, the chandeliers, the statues of saints, all of it sculpted from the same stone the miners worked. Imagine standing there as the candles are lit. The salt walls shimmer softly, translucent, reflecting the light like crystal. The air is cool and heavy, yet it carries the faint echo of prayer. Voices rise, not lost in the depths, but amplified, as though the earth itself is listening. The miners built this not just out of faith, but out of need. Their lives were spent underground, day after day, year after year. The chapel became their sanctuary, a place where they could rest, reflect, and remember that even in darkness, there was light. Walk farther, and the mine reveals more wonders: carvings of kings and queens, of mythical figures, of miners themselves frozen in salt, vast chambers where concerts are now held, the sound of violins carrying through the stone, underground lakes, so still they mirror the walls perfectly, making it hard to tell where water ends and air begins. In one chamber, if you throw a pebble into the lake, the ripples shimmer like silver, a small disturbance in a world that feels eternal. But there is more to Wieliczka than beauty. There is hardship too. For centuries, men toiled here in dim light, breathing dust, swinging pickaxes until their arms ached. Accidents happened. Tunnels collapsed. The salt was precious, but it demanded lives. And yet, out of that toil came something enduring, a city beneath the mountain, a place of memory and art, a testament to human endurance. Today, visitors walk these tunnels not with pickaxes, but with cameras and guided tours. Yet the sense of awe remains. Children's voices echo as they marvel at the sparkling walls. Travelers pause in silence before the chapel, their footsteps soft on the salty floor. Musicians tune their instruments for concerts that fill the chambers with sound. And always the salt is there, ancient, silent, glimmering in the light. There is a saying here: the mine has a soul, and when you walk its tunnels you understand why. It feels alive, not in the way forests or rivers live, but in the way memory lives. Every wall is carved by hands long gone. Every chamber carries the breath of those who once worked and prayed here. You are never alone in Wieliczka. The past walks beside you. At night, when you leave the mine and return to the surface, the world feels different. The air seems lighter, the sky wider. You look at the mountain above and know what lies beneath it. Not just rock, not just salt, but a hidden city, glowing quietly in the dark. The salt city beneath the mountain. A place where the earth gave not only sustenance but beauty. A place where miners carved their prayers into stone. A place that whispers still, in the cool air and glittering walls. That light can be found even in the deepest darkness. The desert spirals of Egypt. In the endless desert, where the sand stretches like an ocean frozen in time, there is a shape that does not belong. From the ground it is subtle, almost invisible, just gentle curves in the earth, mounds and hollows shaped by hand. But from above, when the desert reveals itself like a canvas, the pattern emerges. Two spirals, vast and interwoven, curling into one another as though the desert itself is breathing. This is desert breath. It is not an ancient ruin, not a forgotten fortress, not a temple carved for gods long gone. It is something new, and yet it feels as timeless as the dunes themselves. Built in the mid-1990s by three artists, Danae Stratou, Alexandra Stratou, and Stella Constantinides, it is a work of land art, a sculpture not of stone or bronze but of desert sand and emptiness. Stand in the center, and you are surrounded by silence. The spiral rises around you, its mounds of sand curving outward, its hollows dipping gently toward the horizon. The desert wind whistles softly, carrying grains of sand that shimmer like gold in the sunlight. You walk forward, following the curve. And it feels like walking inside a thought, not straight, not hurried, but endless, circling, patient. The spirals stretch across 100,000 square meters, a scale so vast it can only truly be seen from the sky. From an airplane, from a satellite, from the eye of a bird, the full pattern appears. A double spiral, one made of mounds, the other of depressions, like twin galaxies turning slowly in sand. It is art designed not for the gallery, not for the museum, but for the earth itself. And yet, desert breath was never meant to last. From the moment it was finished, the desert began to reclaim it. The wind softened the edges of the mounds, the hollows filled with drifting sand. Each year the pattern fades a little more, dissolving back into the infinite dunes. But that too is part of its meaning. It is not art that resists time. It is art that accepts time. Art that breathes with the desert, slowly vanishing as if to say, nothing is permanent, not even beauty. You can imagine the artists who created it, working under the blazing Egyptian sun, bulldozers and shovels, sweat and dust, the sound of engines echoing across the barren plain. Day after day, they moved sand, shaped it, curved it, until the desert itself bore their vision. And then they left it, open to sky, to wind, to time. What is it like to stand there now? Some say it feels like standing inside a dream. Others say it feels like standing inside a clock that measures not seconds but centuries. You follow the spiral with your steps, turning slowly outward or inward, and you lose all sense of direction. The desert stretches in every direction, flat and endless, and yet the spiral holds you. It guides you in circles, reminding you that life itself is a spiral, cycles of growth and fading, beginnings and endings, always returning, always changing. At sunrise, the spirals glow pale pink, their curves soft and gentle, shadows falling long and thin. At noon, the light is harsh, the sand blazing white, the heat pressing down like a weight. At sunset, the spirals deepen into gold and violet, the edges sharp against the falling light. And at night, under the stars, they disappear into darkness, leaving only memory, a pattern your feet can feel but your eyes cannot see. But perhaps the strangest thing about desert breath is how it changes you. It is just sand, just space, just emptiness, shaped into form. And yet when you walk it, you feel something, a stillness you did not expect, a quiet inside your own thoughts. The desert has always been a place of silence, a place where people come to seek clarity, to hear the small voice within. Desert breath gives that silence a shape. It makes you walk it, it makes you live inside it. It asks a question without words. What does it mean to create something you know will disappear? Why spend years shaping mounds and hollows when you know the wind will undo them? And yet, is that not what all human work is? Cities crumble, monuments fall, stories fade, but for a time they exist, and in that time they matter. Desert breath is a reminder that impermanence is not loss. It is part of the beauty. From the sky, the spiral still lingers. You can see it on satellite maps, faint but clear, like a fingerprint pressed into the desert. Pilots flying into Hurghada sometimes glimpse it below, a strange pattern among the dunes. Tourists drive out to find it, their footsteps crunching softly on the sand, their voices hushed without knowing why. The spiral speaks, not with sound, but with shape, and when you stand there, the desert wind brushing against your face, the sand warm beneath your hands, you realize that you are part of it too. Your footprints join the pattern, your breath mingles with the air, your thoughts curl like the spiral itself. For a moment, you belong not to the world above, but to the desert, vast, patient, eternal, the desert spirals of Egypt, a work of art that is also a meditation, a monument that is also a question, a pattern written not to endure forever, but to vanish slowly, beautifully, back into the sand. The Island of the Dolls. There is a place in Mexico City where the water runs slow, where the canals of Xochimilco wind through green reeds and hanging willows, and where the air feels thick, almost too quiet, as if the world itself has slowed its breathing. The boats drift along, their painted colors bright against the dark water, but sometimes one boat takes a turn, away from the laughter of tourists, away from the music of mariachi drifting from the floating markets, and enters a quieter canal. And there, in the stillness, something strange appears. From the trees that lean over the water, faces hang. Not human faces, but the faces of dolls. Old, cracked, staring eyes, mouths half open, plastic cheeks faded by sun and rain. Dozens of them, hundreds, dangling from branches, tied to trunks, nailed to posts. Some are whole, others are broken, arms missing, hair tangled, eyes clouded with dust. They sway in the breeze, and the sound they make is like whispers, like something almost alive. This is La Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls. It began with one man. His name was Don Julian Santana. Many years ago, in the 1950s, he came here to live a quiet life, farming on this little island in the canals. But soon, a story began. A girl, they say, drowned in the waters nearby. Her spirit lingered, restless, unsettled. Julian claimed he could hear her. At night he felt her eyes watching, in the silence of the reeds, in the splash of the oars, in the rustle of the wind. He heard whispers, and so he began to hang dolls. Not as decorations, not as toys, but as offerings. He found them floating in the water, washed up along the canals, or pulled them from trash piles in the city. Some were gifts, some he bought, some were broken things abandoned by others. Each doll, he believed, was a way to honor the girl, to calm her spirit, to keep her company. One by one he hung them in the trees, on the fences, in the corners of his small hut, and soon the island changed. It became a place unlike anywhere else, a place where time feels heavy, where every doll seems to watch you as you pass, where silence feels alive. Imagine walking through it. The air is damp, the water lapping gently against the shore. The path is narrow, twisting among the trees. You look up, and there are dolls everywhere. A headless doll nailed to a trunk, a doll with one arm reaching out, fingers broken, a doll with hair stiff from years of dust, its glassy eyes fixed on you. The wind shifts, and they sway together, like 100 tiny bodies moving in rhythm. Some say it feels peaceful, almost holy, a shrine, not of saints but of the forgotten. Others say it feels unsettling, the kind of place where you lower your voice without knowing why. And some say it feels haunted. Tourists who visit sometimes leave gifts, a doll of their own, tied to a tree, joining the silent congregation. Over the years the island has grown thick with them, hundreds upon hundreds, in every state of decay. Time has changed them into something other than toys. their faces cracked, their clothes faded, their hair tangled with cobwebs, but still, they remain, watching, waiting. Don Julian lived here for decades, tending his crops, adding to his collection of dolls. And then, in 2001, something eerie happened. Julian himself drowned in the same waters where he believed the little girl had died so long ago. To those who believe in spirits, it felt like a circle closing. To others, it was coincidence. But the dolls remained, and they remain still. Now the island is visited by those who are curious, by those who seek something strange, something that unsettles but also fascinates. Boats take you there, their oars dipping slowly into the green water, and as you approach, you feel it, a shift in the air, a quiet that feels heavier than silence. And then, the dolls appear. First a few, then more, then dozens. A forest of faces, staring out of the trees. What do they mean? Are they protectors, keeping the spirit company? Or are they reminders of loneliness, of decay, of the strange way humans try to make peace with death? No one can say for sure. The island does not give answers, it only watches. But as you drift away, the boat carrying you back into the wider canals, the image of the dolls stays with you, their cracked eyes, their faded smiles, their fragile arms outstretched, as if waving goodbye. You close your eyes, and you can almost still hear them, swaying in the wind, whispering softly in a language only the river knows. The island of the dolls, a place of silence, a place of offerings. A place where the line between the living and the forgotten feels thin as water, thin as the thread that holds a doll to a tree. The secret doors of Borobudur. There is a place in the heart of Java where the jungle breathes heavy, where mist drapes itself over the hills at dawn, and where, if you walk far enough through the palm trees and the scent of wet earth, the ground suddenly rises into stone. Not just a wall, not just a stairway, but a mountain of carved rock, layered and winding upward like a path to the heavens. This is Borobudur. It does not reveal itself all at once. At first, you see only steps, then terraces. Then, slowly, the shape takes hold. 9 stacked platforms, square at the base, round at the top, each lined with reliefs and statues, each one a story written in stone, and at the summit, like a crown, a great stupa rises, empty yet full of silence, pointing not to the sky but to eternity. Borobudur is not just a temple, it is a mandala made stone, a vision of the cosmos itself. To walk its paths is to walk a journey, from the world of desire, through the world of forms, to the world beyond form. Pilgrims walk clockwise, step by step, terrace by terrace, tracing the spiral that leads to the center, as though their bodies are writing prayers with every step. The walls are alive with carvings, more than 2,000 relief panels, each one telling a story. The life of the Buddha, the law of karma, the turning of the wheel of existence. You lean close, and you see faces, gestures, waves, flowers, ships, dancers, whole worlds carved into stone. Each panel is a voice from over 1,000 years ago, whispering still. But Borobudur also holds secrets. Hidden beneath its visible form, there are doors that few see. In the 19th century, when explorers and scholars began to clear the jungle and study the monument, they discovered something strange. The base of the temple was not the true beginning. Beneath it lay another set of carvings, a hidden foot, covered over with stones as though intentionally concealed. These panels, called the Karma Wibhanga reliefs, depict scenes of cause and effect, of human folly, of suffering and consequence. Some show greed, violence, the weight of desires pulling souls into suffering. Others show kindness, generosity, the way toward liberation. Why were they hidden? No one is certain. Some believe it was to stabilize the monument, a practical choice to prevent collapse. Others think it was symbolic, that the harsh truths of human desire and suffering were meant to be covered, veiled, left unseen by ordinary eyes. Only those who knew the doors, who understood the secret, could glimpse them. Imagine standing there, at dawn, the jungle still cool, mist curling along the edges of the terraces. The stone beneath your hands is rough, warmed by centuries of sun. You run your fingers along the lines of a carving, and you feel the groove where a sculptor's hand once pressed. The air is filled with the calls of birds, the hum of insects, the far-off sound of a motorbike somewhere in the valley. Yet here, on the temple, it feels as if you have stepped out of time. As you climb higher, the carvings thin, the panels grow simpler. By the time you reach the circular terraces near the summit, the walls are plain, empty of stories. Instead, there are stupas, 72 of them, each bell-shaped, each pierced with diamond-shaped openings. Inside each one sits a Buddha, cross-legged, serene, sealed away yet visible through the lattice. You peer inside, and their faces gaze back, calm, eternal. Some Buddhas are whole, some are broken, yet all radiate the same silence. And finally, at the very top, the great central stupa stands, It is solid, uncarved, without image. An emptiness that is not nothing, but everything. To stand there is to feel both small and infinite at once, surrounded by jungle, sky, and the endless horizon. The secret doors of Borobudur remind us that not all truths are visible at once. Some are hidden, covered, waiting for the patient eye. The temple itself is like a riddle carved in stone, a place that is both open and closed, both clear and secret. It is said that those who walk its path slowly, with intention, begin to see more than just stone. They begin to see themselves, their own desires, their own patterns, their own spirals of karma reflected in the spirals of the terraces. And so, Borobudur is not just a place to visit. It is a place to journey, to wander slowly, to breathe deeply. Each step upward is a step inward. Each hidden carving, each secret door is a reminder that wisdom often lies beneath the surface, waiting quietly, like the reliefs buried beneath the base, like the silence at the top of the temple, like the truth inside the empty stupa. The temple has endured earthquakes, eruptions, centuries of jungle growth, and still it stands. The morning sun rises over its stones, casting long shadows across its terraces, and the jungle mist slips away, revealing again the cosmic mountain. Borobudur waits, as it always has, its doors half open, its stories half told, whispering to anyone who will listen, climb, walk, see, and perhaps understand. The Tower of Silence. High above the city of Yazd in Iran, where the desert stretches flat and endless beneath a burning sun, there are two lonely hills. At first, they look like nothing more than mounds of rock, bare and lifeless against the horizon. But if you climb closer, if you follow the dusty path that winds up their slopes, you find stone walls circling their crowns, and within those circles lies one of the most haunting and profound places ever built by human hands. They are called the Towers of Silence. For centuries, the Zoroastrian people came here to perform a ritual unlike any other. When one of their own passed away, they did not bury the body in the earth, nor set it to flame. To them, earth and fire were sacred, too pure to be touched by decay. Instead, they placed the body at the top of these towers, open to the sky, where nature itself would complete the final act of life. The circle at the top of the tower was simple, unadorned. In the center lay the stones where the bodies were placed. Around the edges, stone channels where rain could wash the remains toward a central pit, returning them to dust. The rest was left to the sky, to the sun, and to the wings of birds. And so the towers were never silent, not truly. Above them, vultures circled, patient, watchful, drifting on currents of hot desert air. They came in flocks, descending when the rituals were done, covering the bodies until nothing remained but bone. It was a practice that seemed harsh to outsiders, even frightening, but to the Zoroastrians, it was sacred, a final gift of the body to the natural world. Nothing wasted, nothing corrupted. Imagine the scene. You climb the slope under the blazing Iranian sun. The air is dry, the stones beneath your feet sharp with heat. At the top, the circle opens before you, wide, silent, empty now, but heavy with memory. The desert wind whistles across the stones. You look out, and the city of Yazd lies far below, its clay-colored rooftops blending with the sands, its wind towers reaching into the sky, and above, the sky is endless, pale and fierce. It is here that generations of families came to say goodbye. Quietly, with prayer, they carried their loved ones up this hill, into the open embrace of the elements. There was no coffin, no tomb, no monument but the circle itself, just the certainty that the body would rise into the sky, carried by wings, given back to the eternal cycle. The towers themselves are plain, no carvings, no ornament, just thick stone walls, enclosing silence, and yet, standing within them, you feel a weight, not fear, exactly, but reverence, a hush that presses against you, as if the very air remembers what happened here. Over time, the practice faded. In the mid-20th century, the use of the towers was officially banned. Concerns of hygiene, modern laws, the pressure of changing times, all these closed the circle. Today, the towers stand empty. No more processions climb the hills. No more vultures circle above, and yet the silence remains. Visitors who come here often speak of the strange stillness. They stand at the edge of the circle, their shadows falling across the stones, and they imagine the lives of those who came before. They picture the families climbing the hill, the priests chanting prayers, the final moments as loved ones were placed within the circle. They picture the birds descending, the cycle completing. It is a place that forces you to confront death, not as something hidden away, but as something open, natural, a part of life's order. And perhaps that is the true meaning of the Towers of Silence. They are not monuments of fear, but of acceptance, a reminder that life feeds life, that nothing ends, it only changes form, that the body, in the end, is not ours to keep. The desert has reclaimed parts of the towers now, Sand gathers against their walls, stones crumble in the heat. But still they endure, watching over Yazd, standing against the horizon like two silent guardians. At night, under the stars, they seem almost alive, their circles glowing faintly in the moonlight, as if remembering the countless souls who pass through their gates. To stand there is to feel small, and yet strangely calm. You breathe in the desert air, and you know, this is what silence means. Not emptiness, not nothingness, but peace. The towers of silence, places where the sky meets the earth, where the living met the dead, where the body was returned to the wind and the wings of birds, places where silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of eternity. The giants of Monte Alban, high in the mountains of southern Mexico, where the valleys open wide and the horizon rolls in blue waves of hills, there is a plateau cut flat as though by some enormous hand. On this plateau, above the city of Oaxaca, the Zapotec people built their capital. They called it Monte Alban. It was not a city tucked into valleys for protection. It was not hidden in jungle or cradled by rivers. No, Monte Alban was built in the sky itself. To reach it you must climb winding roads that rise above the green valleys. And then, suddenly, the land opens flat, and there before you stretches a city of stone. Plazas, pyramids, terraces, stairways, all aligned with the sun, the stars, the great order of the cosmos. At its height, more than 2,000 years ago, Monte Alban was home to tens of thousands. Priests, rulers, artisans, farmers, all came together here, on this mountain, to live, to worship, to bury their dead. And yet, when you stand there now, it feels less like a city, and more like a world of giants. The stairways are enormous, the plazas wide enough to hold thousands, the stone blocks are vast, cut and placed with precision. You feel small among them, as if the builders meant it that way, to remind you that here, you walk not among men, but among powers greater than yourself. The heart of Monte Alban is the Grand Plaza. Imagine standing there, the sun blazing above, the stone beneath your feet warm. To the north and south, pyramids rise like guardians. To the east and west, platforms and temples stretch wide. And in the center, open space, a stage for ceremonies, for processions, for rituals that once bound heaven and earth together. But Monte Alban holds more than grandeur, it holds mystery. Carved into its stones are images that puzzle even now. The most famous are the danzantes, the dancers, dozens of figures carved in relief, their bodies twisted, their faces strange, some appearing to float, others contorted in ways that suggest not dance at all, but perhaps suffering, perhaps death. Scholars debate, are these dancers celebrating ritual, or are they captives, fallen enemies offered in sacrifice? To walk among the danzantes is to feel unsettled. Their bodies are ancient yet alive, their lines flowing with a kind of rhythm, as though the stone itself remembers movement. Each one is unique, each one a mystery. You linger on their faces, their hands, the strange shapes around them, and you feel the weight of meaning that has slipped beyond our reach. And then there are the tombs. Monte Alban is honeycombed with them, carved beneath the platforms, hidden within the earth. Tomb after tomb, filled with treasures, painted walls, jade jewelry, gold ornaments, ceramic urns. In one, a great mask of turquoise. In another, bones carefully arranged, offerings placed with reverence. Death was not an end here, it was a passage, and the city itself was built to guide the living and the dead alike. But perhaps the most striking mystery lies in the very shape of Monte Alban. The city was built with precision, its structures aligned not just with the land but with the sky. Certain stairways face the solstice sun, certain temples align with distant mountains, and at the center of the plaza there stands a strange building. Unlike the others, an arrow-shaped structure pointing at a diagonal, its alignment not with the city but with the heavens. Some believe it was an observatory, a place where priests watched the stars, charted the movements of Venus, predicted the cycles of time. Picture it, a Zapotec priest, cloaked in feathers and jewels, standing atop the stone at night. Around him the city sleeps, torches flicker in the wind. Above him the stars blaze, clear and sharp in the mountain air. He lifts his eyes, and in the turning of Venus, in the slow wheel of the constellations, he reads the future. He sees when to plant, when to harvest, when to make war, when to seek peace. The city, the people, the very rhythm of life, all bound to the sky. And so Monte Alban was not just a city of stone, it was a city of time. A place where earth and heaven met, where humans lived among giants, not only in the size of the buildings but in the scale of thought, of vision, of imagination. Today Monte Alban is quiet. The wind sweeps across the plaza. Lizards dart along the stones. Tourists wander slowly, their voices hushed by the weight of centuries. You can still climb the pyramids, still stand at the top and look out. From there the valleys stretch in every direction. Oaxaca below, green fields, mountains rising blue and far. You understand then why the Zapotec chose this place. From here you see everything. From here you are part of the sky. But as the sun lowers, shadows stretch long across the plaza, and Monte Alban changes. The stairways darken, the carvings blur. The danzantes seem to shift, their lines flickering in twilight. The city feels alive again, as though the giants have returned, walking unseen among the stones. You feel it, the weight of their footsteps, the murmur of their voices carried on the wind. Monte Alban, a city of giants, a city of silence, a city that still whispers, if you walk slowly, if you listen closely, if you let the stones speak. The desert castles of Jordan. In the endless deserts of Jordan, where the horizon dissolves into heat and sky, there are places that seem at first like mirages. You travel for hours across flat plains, the sand stretching wide, the light shimmering, and then a shape appears. Solid, square, rising from the emptiness. Stone walls, thick and stern, standing alone against the wind. This is Qasr Karana, one of the most enigmatic of Jordan's desert castles. It looks like a fortress, its walls rising in perfect symmetry. Towers at the corners, a single gate at the front. From afar, you imagine warriors stationed here, archers on the walls, sentries keeping watch across the desert. But as you step closer, as you pass through the great doorway and into its heart, you realize the truth is stranger. Inside, the rooms are small, too delicate for war. The staircases twist, leading to chambers with narrow windows that let in light but not defense. There are meeting rooms, alcoves, even spaces that seem meant for teaching or gathering, but no wells, no stronghold of arms. It is a castle that is not a castle. Historians still argue about its purpose. Was it a caravanserai, a resting place for travelers crossing the harsh desert routes? Was it a retreat for nobles, a desert lodge for meetings between rulers and tribes? Or was it something else, a symbol, a monument, a mark of power on the landscape? The answers drift like sand, shifting with each discovery, never settling fully. And Qasr Karana is not alone. Scattered across Jordan's deserts are others. Qasr Amra, with its painted walls, a jewel of frescoes in a world of stone. Qasr Azraq, built of black basalt, once used by Lawrence of Arabia as his base during the Arab Revolt. Each one different, each one carrying a secret purpose, together forming a constellation of ruins across the emptiness. But Qasr Karana holds a special silence. Step into its courtyard, and the desert light falls differently here. The square rises around you, its walls tall and blank, pierced only by narrow slits. The air feels cool inside, even while the outside burns with heat. You look up, and the sky is framed perfectly above, a blue square cut into the stone. Climb the stairways, and you wander through hallways where the walls whisper with age. You see the delicate arches, the carved plaster, the way the builders cared for beauty, even in a place so remote. The windows open not to battlefields, but to the horizon. Views of nothing but desert, endless and patient. It is as if the building itself was made to remind you of scale, that here humans may carve stone, may shape walls, but beyond them lies eternity, unshaped, unbroken. Imagine the life of a traveler, centuries ago. You cross the desert on camelback, days of heat and dust behind you. Your lips are dry, your body weary, and then in the shimmering distance you see the square walls of Qasr Karana rising. Relief floods you. You approach, step through the gate, and suddenly you are within shade, within coolness, within stone. Perhaps music drifted here once, perhaps voices echoed through the chambers, perhaps travelers told stories by firelight, their words mixing with the wind. Today the castle is empty, no fires burn in its rooms, no guards pace its walls, only footsteps of visitors crunch softly against the sand, only whispers of guides trying to explain what still remains uncertain. And above, the desert sky remains the same as it ever was, bright, merciless, eternal. There is something almost dreamlike about it, a fortress without war, a castle without a king, a monument without a clear story. It stands, and has stood, for more than 1,000 years, while the desert shifts around it, and in its endurance, it becomes something greater than its purpose. It becomes a question, a presence, a reminder that not everything must be explained to be powerful. When the sun sets behind Qasr Karana, its walls glow golden, then fade into shadow. The desert cools, the stars emerge sharp and bright, and the square silhouette rises dark against the sky. In that moment it feels less like a ruin and more like a gateway, a door between past and present, between what we know and what we can only wonder. The desert castles of Jordan, stones against the silence, stories against the forgetting. They remain, watching the sands shift, watching travelers pass, offering not answers but presence. And perhaps in that silence they speak the loudest. The lost temples beneath the sea. off the western coast of India, where the Arabian Sea rolls endlessly against the shoreline of Gujarat. There are whispers of a city that once lived, and then drowned. A city of temples, palaces, walls, and streets, now hidden beneath the waves. This is Dwarka, the city of myth and of mystery. Stand on the shores of modern Dwarka today, and you'll see pilgrims moving toward the great Jagat Mandir, the temple of Krishna. Bells ring, prayers drift into the air, and the sea crashes gently against the ghats. For centuries, this place has been holy, a beacon for those who follow the stories of Krishna, the divine king who is said to have ruled here. The legends describe a golden city, built by the hands of gods, with palaces that shimmered like the sun, and walls that rose proudly against the tides. But it is also said that when Krishna left this world, the city was claimed by the sea, swallowed whole, lost to time. For generations, this was myth, a tale told in sacred texts, a story recited by priests, something to imagine but not to touch, until the sea began to give back its secrets. In the 1980s, divers working along the coast discovered something unusual beneath the waves. Not random stones or scattered debris, but structures, lines of walls, pavements, pillars, the clear signs of something made, not by nature, but by human hands. Archaeologists plunged deeper, mapping the seabed, tracing the patterns. They found steps carved into rock, foundations that seemed to outline great halls, a city plan, buried beneath silt, waiting like a shadow beneath the water. Imagine swimming there, in the dim blue light of the sea, your breath echoing through a diver's mask, bubbles rising above you. As you glide closer, you see the shape of a wall, then a street, then the outline of something that looks like a temple platform. The seabed is silent, but your mind fills with the sounds that might once have lived here. The chants of priests, the bells of temples, the bustle of markets, the laughter of children running through narrow lanes. Now, only fish dart through the doorways, only corals cling to the ancient stones. What is it that lies beneath Dwarka's waters? Some believe it is indeed the city of legend, proof that myth and history are not so far apart. Others argue it may be an earlier settlement, drowned by rising seas, its connection to Krishna a matter of faith more than fact. Whatever the answer, the ruins are real. They are there, silent and heavy, their stones laid by hands long forgotten, their purpose once clear and now clouded by centuries. The sea has its own way of keeping secrets. Each tide washes over the ruins, erasing, softening, hiding. Each storm stirs the sand, revealing fragments, then burying them again. Divers who return never find the place exactly as it was. It shifts, as if alive, as if the ocean itself guards the memory of Dwarka. And yet, people still come. Pilgrims still stand at the shore, looking out at the waves, believing that the city of their god sleeps just beneath the surface. Fishermen tell stories of lights they see at night, flickering beneath the water. Locals speak of strange stones caught in their nets, carved with patterns that don't belong to the sea. There is a haunting beauty in this, a city both present and absent, both myth and archaeology, both worshipped and studied. You can walk the streets of modern Dwarka, hearing the prayers of today, and at the same time, imagine the streets beneath the waves, where the same prayers may have once risen thousands of years ago. Two Dwarkas, one above the water, one below, mirroring each other across time. At sunset, when the sky turns gold and the sea glows with fading light, stand at the edge of the shore and listen. The waves strike the stones with a rhythm that feels like heartbeat, like memory. You may find yourself wondering, if the sea were to draw back, just for a moment, what would you see? Would the temples rise again? Would the streets open before you, leading you into a city of gods and men, alive once more? The ocean keeps its silence, the ruins remain, and the story of Dwarka drifts on. Part myth, part history, part dream, carried by the tides, waiting for those who dare to dive beneath the waves and listen. The frozen mammoth steppe. In the far reaches of Siberia, where winter lingers longer than memory, and the earth itself seems locked in a frozen dream, there lies a land the world once called the Mammoth Steppe. It is a place where time feels heavy, where the air is sharp with cold, and where the ground solid, ancient, eternal, still holds the bones of a vanished world. This is Yakutia, the kingdom of permafrost. Step into it, and you feel the silence first. The snow stretches to the horizon, white upon white, broken only by the dark outlines of larch trees, their branches stiff with frost. The rivers lie beneath ice, their surfaces shining like glass. The sky is pale, often without sun, a dome of endless gray. And beneath your feet, beneath the frozen crust of earth, are secrets, frozen not for centuries, but for tens of thousands of years. Here, buried in the ice, are the remains of creatures that once roamed freely across the plains. Woolly mammoths with their long, shaggy coats and sweeping tusks, moving in herds through the grasslands that covered this land in another age. Alongside them, the great steppe bison, the cave lions, the woolly rhinoceroses, a world that seems like myth, yet whose traces remain, preserved by the cold as if waiting for someone to return and find them. Imagine walking across this landscape thousands of years ago. The air was still cold, but not yet as merciless. Grasses rippled across the plains, stretching for miles, rich and thick, feeding herds that thundered across the steppe. The mammoth calves followed their mothers, their feet sinking softly into the damp earth, their trunks curling and unrolling in curiosity. Hunters from ancient tribes followed them, their spears tipped with stone, their survival bound to the rhythm of these great beasts. The land was alive, a balance of human and animal, of hunter and prey, of endurance and respect. But the ice tightened its grip, the climate shifted, the grasslands thinned, the cold deepened, and one by one the giants disappeared. Some were hunted to their end, others simply could not survive the change. The mammoths fell, their bones scattered. Some sank into mud, others froze where they stood, their bodies swallowed by permafrost. And there they stayed, not crumbling, not turning to dust, but sleeping, perfectly preserved, as if the ice itself became their tomb. Centuries passed, millennia. And then, in the age of explorers, of scientists, of curiosity, people began to find them again. Hunters in Yakutia would walk the riverbanks in spring, when the thaw revealed what winter had hidden, and there, lying in the mud, would be the long curved arc of a tusk, gleaming like ivory against the dark soil. Dig deeper, and sometimes more appeared. A skull, a femur, even entire bodies, with fur still clinging to their skin, with the last grass they ate still in their stomachs. One such discovery changed the world. In the early 20th century, a frozen mammoth calf was found, its tiny body intact, its trunk curled as if it were only sleeping. Later finds would reveal adults, calves, even the faint traces of human butchery upon their bones. Each one was a message, a story, a fragment of a world that no longer existed. And now, in the modern age, Yakutia has become both a graveyard and a laboratory. Scientists from around the world travel here, their boots crunching on frozen soil, their breath hanging in the air. They descend into tunnels carved into the permafrost, walls of ice glowing blue around them, and pull from the ground the remains of mammoths and other Pleistocene creatures, still carrying the DNA of their kind. There are even whispers now, bold and controversial, of bringing the mammoth back, of using genetics to resurrect a species that has been gone for thousands of years. But here, in the frozen quiet, it feels less like science fiction and more like communion. Because when you hold the curve of a tusk, when you run your hand across its ridged surface, you feel the weight not just of an animal, but of an age. You feel the echo of the hunters who followed them. You feel the cold of a world before cities, before nations, before history was written down. A world where humans were small and the mammoths were great. At night, the steppe is darker than almost anywhere else on Earth. The stars blaze sharp and endless, the Milky Way stretching across the sky like frost across glass. Stand there, in Yakutia, in the stillness, and you can almost see the herds moving again, their shapes fading in and out of the mist, their tusks catching the starlight. The silence becomes alive, filled with the footsteps of giants. The mammoths may be gone, but their memory lingers, in the bones beneath the ice, in the tusks pulled from the thaw, in the dreams of people who wonder what it would be like to walk beside them again. The mammoth steppe is not just a place, it is a reminder that the world has been different before, that it will be different again, and that within the frozen earth, the past is not truly gone, only sleeping. And so the steppe endures, silent, vast, eternal, holding close the secrets of its giants. The vanished pyramids of Caral. High in the Supu Valley of Peru, where the desert meets the river and the mountains loom hazy in the distance, there lies a place so ancient, so quiet, that it almost feels forgotten by time itself. A city of pyramids, plazas, and stairways, built not of myth, but of stone and earth. Yet for centuries it remained hidden, vanishing beneath the sands until the world stumbled across it again. This is Caral, the mother city, the heart of a vanished world. Stand upon its plateau today, and you see something astonishing. Before you, the desert stretches wide, barren and dry. The wind carries dust across the valley floor. The river glimmers faintly in the sun, and then your eyes adjust, and you notice the shapes, flat-topped mounds rising from the earth, stairways cut with precision, plazas sunk deep into the ground like bowls carved by human hands. These are pyramids, not as towering as those of Egypt, not as ornate as those of the Maya, but older, far older. Caral is nearly 5,000 years old. At the same time that pharaohs were building their monuments along the Nile, at the same time that Mesopotamian kings ruled their cities between the rivers, the people of Caral were raising platforms of stone, organizing plazas, creating a society that pulsed with music, trade, and ritual. And yet, unlike so many other civilizations, Caral left behind no weapons, no fortifications, no walls for war. It seems to have been built on something gentler, something subtler, the rhythms of trade, the worship of gods, and the weaving of community. Imagine walking into Caral thousands of years ago. The sun beats down, warm upon your skin, but the air is alive with sound. From one pyramid, the deep thrum of drums carries across the plaza. From another, the high notes of flutes, carved from condor bones, pierce the air. People move along the stairways, their robes bright with woven patterns. Merchants lay out fish brought from the Pacific coast, cotton grown from the valley fields, gourds filled with seeds. Children chase each other around the plazas, their laughter mingling with the music. Priests stand at the tops of platforms, offering prayers to the sky, to the earth, to the rivers that sustain them. Caral thrived, not through conquest, but through connection. Archaeologists have found evidence of trade reaching hundreds of miles from the jungles of the Amazon to the mountains of the Andes, to the distant coast where seashells were gathered and brought inland. Caral was a hub, a center, a place where ideas and goods flowed as freely as the river itself. And yet, despite its greatness, Caral disappeared. Slowly, silently, it faded. The people moved on, the pyramids were abandoned, and the desert began to reclaim them. For thousands of years, the city slept beneath layers of sand and soil, its stairways hidden, its plazas forgotten. Local farmers worked their fields without knowing they plowed beside one of the oldest cities in the world. Travelers passed through the valley without ever seeing the stones beneath their feet. Caral had not crumbled, it had simply vanished from memory. It wasn't until the 20th century that the sands began to give way. Archaeologists uncovered the mounds and recognized them for what they were, not hills, not natural formations, but the bones of a city. As they dug, the story of Caral began to rise again. The plazas took shape, the stairways revealed themselves. The pyramids stood once more, mute but powerful, their silence carrying the weight of millennia. Today, when you walk through Caral, you feel that silence deeply. The wind whistles through the empty plazas, the stairs lead nowhere, their tops long since eroded. The plazas that once echoed with music and prayer now hold only shadows, and yet you sense something lingering, a presence, a memory. The idea that here, long before the empires we know, long before written history carved its words upon clay and papyrus, there was already a people building, creating, dreaming, and the most haunting part, we still know so little. Who were the rulers of Caral? What gods did they worship? Why did they vanish? There are no written records, no clear answers. Only the stones, the bones of their flutes, the remains of their cotton, the outlines of their homes. We are left to wonder, to imagine, to fill the silence with stories. At dusk, when the desert cools and the pyramids glow faintly in the fading light, you can almost picture Caral alive again. Fires burning in the plazas, music rising to the stars, the people gathered in circles, faces lit by flames, voices lifted in song, and then the wind comes, carrying the sand, erasing the image once more. The pyramids sink back into silence, into memory, into mystery. The pyramids of Caral do not rise as high as Egypt's, they do not shine with gold, nor hold the names of kings, but perhaps that is their gift. They remind us that greatness does not always roar, sometimes it hums softly, like a flute across the desert night, echoing long after the players are gone. And so, Caral endures, not in power, not in monuments untouched by time, but in the quiet resilience of its stones, in the mystery of its disappearance, and in the awe it inspires in those who walk its plazas today. A city older than almost any other, returned to us from the sand, whispering of a world we are only beginning to understand. The tombs of the Scythian kings. Across the vast steppes of Central Asia, where the horizon is so wide it almost feels like the earth itself is endless, the land is dotted with strange, rising shapes. From afar they look like simple hills, mounds of grass-covered soil rising gently from the plains. But as you draw closer, you see that these are not natural hills at all, they are monuments. Silent, deliberate, enormous. These are the kurgans, the burial mounds of the Scythians, the tombs of their kings. The Scythians were a people of the steppe, nomads, warriors, horsemen who lived not behind walls but beneath the open sky. For centuries they roamed the grasslands of Eurasia, from the Black Sea to Siberia, carrying their homes with them, living from their herds, moving with the seasons. To outsiders they were fierce and untamed. Archers who could ride and shoot with deadly accuracy, warriors whose raids shook empires. But within their own world, they carried a culture rich with ritual, with art, with reverence for the life beyond life. And nothing shows this more than the kurgans. Stand before one, and you feel its weight. Some rise as high as 60 feet, their bases spreading wider than a football field. To build them required not just strength, but devotion, an entire community working together to pile earth, stone, and timber into a monument that would last for millennia. Beneath the mound lies the tomb, carefully constructed, often lined with wood, sometimes filled with treasures. the kings and queens of the Scythians were buried with their horses, their weapons, their jewelry, their golden ornaments. Even their servants sometimes joined them, sacrificed to accompany their rulers into the afterlife. Imagine the burial of a Scythian king. The steppe is silent, except for the low mournful notes of pipes and the steady beat of drums. The body of the king, dressed in rich garments, lies upon a bier, his golden ornaments gleaming in the sun. Around him stand warriors, their bows unstrung in respect, their horses restless. The people gather, a sea of fur and leather, their faces solemn. They know this is not just a funeral, it is a passage. The mound will rise, and within it, their king will continue his journey, leading not only in this life, but in the one beyond. Archaeologists who have opened these tombs find wonders: golden plaques shaped into deer, stags with antlers curling like fire, cups of silver, weapons still sharp, their handles adorned with intricate designs, and sometimes, the preserved remains of the dead themselves, men and women whose skin, hair, and even tattoos have survived the centuries, locked away by the dry cold of the steppe. On some, the tattoos are elaborate, swirling patterns of beasts and mythic creatures, etched into their skin as if to carry protection into eternity. But perhaps the most haunting finds are the horses, rows of them, carefully placed, their harnesses decorated with gold, their skulls aligned as if ready to gallop once more. To the Scythians, the horse was more than an animal. It was freedom, it was survival, it was spirit. To ride into the afterlife without a horse would have been unthinkable, and so, the king's herd followed him, eternal companions for an eternal ride. Today, many of these kurgans still rise above the plains, grass growing over them, blending them into the land. Shepherds graze their flocks nearby, children climb their slopes, unaware of the treasure and history beneath their feet. Some lie untouched, their secrets still sealed. Others have been opened, revealing their riches, their stories, their ghosts, and yet, even when excavated, the mystery lingers. Who exactly was buried here? What songs were sung at their funerals? What names did they carry? The Scythians left no written records. Their stories come to us only through the words of outsiders, and through the silent testimony of their tombs. Stand at the top of a kurgan today, and look out across the steppe. The wind brushes against the grass, the horizon rolls out in every direction, and you realize that this land has always been about movement. The Scythians lived with no permanent cities, no stone temples. Their temples were the sky, their walls were the horizons, and yet here in these mounds, they built permanence. Here they carved memory into the land itself. At dusk, the kurgans glow softly in the fading light. They look less like graves, and more like sleeping giants, resting beneath the earth. The stars appear, sharp, countless, eternal. And perhaps if you listen closely, you can hear the echo of hooves, the sound of riders moving across the plain, their arrows whistling, their voices calling out in a tongue long lost. The kings may be gone, the people dispersed, but the steppe still remembers. The kurgans remain, silent guardians of a vanished world, tombs that rise like whispers of eternity across the endless grass. They remind us that even a people without cities, without books, without monuments of stone, could leave behind something profound, a legacy not of walls but of earth, not of conquest but of memory. And in the silence of the steppe, the Scythian kings still ride. The painted tombs of Beni Hassan. Along the cliffs that rise above the eastern bank of the Nile, there is a place where silence clings to stone, and time feels suspended between the desert winds and the river's eternal flow. This place is called Beni Hassan, a necropolis carved into the limestone cliffs, where tombs of princes and governors from 4,000 years ago still hold their painted stories. Unlike the monumental grandeur of the Valley of the Kings, Beni Hassan is quieter, humbler in scale, yet it carries an intimacy that feels almost like stepping into someone's memory, preserved in color and brushstroke. From a distance, the cliffs look ordinary, jagged stone, sun-bleached, streaked with shadows where the light of the day falls unevenly. But as you climb the steep paths and approach, you begin to see the openings, dark rectangles cut into the face of the rock, doorways leading into another world. The desert wind follows you as you step inside, and suddenly you are in the past. The first thing you notice is the color: reds, yellows, blacks, earthy tones that have somehow survived for millennia. The walls of these tombs are alive with painted scenes: farmers harvesting grain, wrestlers locked in combat, boats gliding down the Nile, soldiers marching in formation. Unlike the grand mythological imagery of pharaohs' tombs, the art of Beni Hassan shows life as it was lived. It is not gods and heavens here, but the human world, the daily, the ordinary, the real. Take the famous wrestling scenes. Dozens of pairs of men captured mid-motion, their muscles taut, their arms locked, each figure painted with precision, each stance unique, as if the artist studied the movements carefully, freezing them in time. 4,000 years later, the poses still look familiar: grapples, throws, the same techniques practiced in gyms and arenas today. You realize suddenly, people have always moved like this, always struggled, always competed, always lived through their bodies. The tomb walls become a bridge, collapsing the centuries between you and them. Then your eyes drift to the hunting scenes, men with bows, arrows drawn, aiming at gazelles, at birds flying above the marshes. Dogs leap into the chase. The Nile is painted, its reeds swaying, fish darting beneath its painted surface. These are not just decorations, they are memories, hopes, maybe even prayers, that in the afterlife, the dead might continue to hunt, to fish, to eat, to live in abundance. And then, deeper into the tomb, you see the families, husbands, wives, children, all painted with gentle detail. The men often larger, as convention demanded, but the women's faces are serene, their hands delicate, their robes flowing. Children stand beside them, miniature yet recognizable. These were not kings, not pharaohs, they were the nobles, the governors of this region during Egypt's Middle Kingdom. Their tombs were not filled with gold or colossal statues, but with something simpler, the painted record of their lives. There is something deeply human about Beni Hassan. You can almost feel the pride of the tomb owners, the desire to be remembered, not only as rulers, but as people who lived, who loved, who enjoyed the hunt, the feast, the games of sport. They wanted eternity, not just as symbols, but as themselves. The ceilings, too, tell a story. Many are painted to mimic the beams of wooden houses, as if the dead wanted their tombs to feel like home. Imagine that preparing for eternity, not with alien grandeur, but with the comfort of familiar architecture, the reassurance of domestic space. Even in death, they wanted to carry home with them. Step back outside, and the desert hits you again. The bright sun, the endless horizon, the river flowing far below. The contrast is striking. Outside, silence, sand, eternity. Inside, color, movement, life. It feels as though the cliffs themselves are split between two worlds, the living and the dead, the seen and the remembered. Archaeologists who study Beni Hassan find more than art. They find the echoes of Egypt's Middle Kingdom society. The governors buried here were powerful men, ruling their provinces with authority, but under the distant gaze of the pharaohs. Their tombs reflect not only their personal lives, but also their role in the great machinery of Egypt. The soldiers they commanded, the ships they sent along the Nile, the tribute they collected, the alliances they built. The paintings are not just decoration, they are a record of administration, a statement of power. And yet, as you linger, it is not the power that lingers most. It is the humanity. A child holding a parent's hand, a boatman steering his craft, wrestlers testing their strength, farmers harvesting under the sun. These are details that might have been lost to time, had they not been painted here in these quiet tombs. At dusk, when the light begins to fade and the cliffs turn golden, Beni Hassan grows even more mysterious. The painted figures inside seem to glow in the dimming light, as if lit from within. The voices of the past, farmers, hunters, wrestlers, governors, seem to murmur softly from the walls. And you realize, this is not a place of death at all. It is a place of persistence, of memory, of life carried forward across 4,000 years. The tombs of Beni Hassan do not shout their greatness. They whisper. They remind us that history is not only the story of kings and empires, but of families, communities, the daily rhythm of existence. And in their painted walls, the people of Egypt's Middle Kingdom are still alive, wrestling, hunting, rowing, laughing, forever. The desert tomb of Palmyra. In the middle of the Syrian desert, far from the green banks of the Euphrates and far from the Mediterranean's cooling winds, there lies a city that was once a jewel of the ancient world, Palmyra. The name alone feels like a whisper carried on desert winds, a sound that belongs both to the earth and to myth. Today, when you approach it, the ruins rise out of the sands like a mirage. Columns and arches, bleached by centuries of sun, standing fragile and defiant against the empty horizon. But Palmyra was not always a ruin. Long ago it was a crossroads, a meeting place of worlds. Here the caravans came, laden with silk from China, spices from India, frankincense from Arabia, and glassware from Rome. The desert that now seems barren once echoed with the steps of camels, the voices of traders, the sound of languages from every corner of the known world. Palmyra was not just a city, it was a living bridge, a place where East and West touched hands. And yet, beyond the great colonnades, beyond the temples and marketplaces, lies something quieter, and perhaps more haunting: the tombs. Palmyra's necropolis, stretching out across the desert floor, is unlike any other. Here the dead were not hidden away in darkness. They were placed in grand towers, in house-like tombs carved from stone, monuments that stood proudly against the sky. Even in death, the Palmyranese seemed to reach upward, as if refusing to be swallowed by the sands. Walk among these tombs at twilight, and you feel the stillness. The desert air cools, the columns of the city glow with the last amber light, and the tomb towers cast long, solemn shadows. Each tower once held entire families, generations stacked in niches, their faces carved into limestone reliefs that sealed their resting places. They do not look like anonymous figures. No, they stare out with wide eyes, their gazes calm, eternal, as if waiting for you to step close and remember them. Imagine the silence inside, a chamber of stone, lined with sarcophagi, the air heavy with incense smoke centuries ago, lamps flickering against the walls, priests murmuring prayers in Aramaic and Greek. Families gathered to honor their ancestors, the living and the dead joined in rituals meant to stretch across eternity. And now, nothing but the echo of your own footsteps. Yet the walls remember, the eyes carved in relief still hold their watch. One of the most haunting things about Palmyra's tombs is how personal they feel. The sculpted busts that sealed the burial niches show men and women in their finest robes, their jewelry carefully chiseled, their hands raised in gestures of greeting. They are not distant gods, they are merchants, mothers, soldiers, children. They are the faces of a city that wanted to be remembered not only for its grandeur, but for its people. If you stand long enough in front of one of these reliefs, the desert wind rushing past, you begin to wonder, who was she? This woman with the finely braided hair, her eyes painted once with bright pigment. Did she walk through Palmyra's markets? Did she laugh beneath its palm trees? Did she wait for caravans to return from faraway lands? Or this man, with stern features and a robe draped across his shoulder, was he a caravan leader, a soldier, a father? Their names are lost, but their presence remains, and as you step back out into the open air, you see the way the tombs rise against the vast emptiness of the desert. They do not look fragile, even though time has worn them. They look defiant, as if the Palmyrans knew the desert would one day reclaim their city, and they wanted their tombs to stand like beacons, guiding memory through the ages. Palmyra's history is one of brilliance and tragedy. The city reached its golden age under Queen Zenobia, a ruler who dared to challenge Rome itself. Under her command, Palmyra stretched its influence across much of the Near East, briefly becoming an empire of its own. But when Rome struck back, the city's dream was shattered. Zenobia was captured, taken to Rome, and Palmyra itself was left vulnerable. Its temples were looted, its streets silenced, and yet the tombs remained, silent witnesses to glory and fall. Today, the ruins of Palmyra are fragile. Wars and modern destruction have scarred them, and the tombs, those silent guardians of the dead, have suffered too. Some have been damaged, their reliefs broken, their chambers desecrated. But even now, walking there, you feel the resilience of the place. The desert has kept its secrets, holding the memory of the city in the quiet way only deserts can. At night, when the sky is clear and the stars pour across the heavens, Palmyra transforms. The columns glow silver in the moonlight, the tomb towers stand like dark sentinels, and the silence deepens until you can almost hear the murmur of ancient voices. It is then, under the desert stars, that the city feels alive again. Not in stone, not in ruins, but in memory, in the imagination of those who stand there and listen. Palmyra teaches us something subtle. Great cities rise, they shine, they fall. Empires come and go. But what endures are the human traces left behind. The carved faces in a tomb, the painted eyes staring back at us across millennia, the whispers carried in desert winds. The tombs of Palmyra are not just monuments of death, they are monuments of remembrance, and in that sense, the city has never truly vanished. So if you ever find yourself wandering the Syrian desert and you see those ruins rising out of the horizon, step closer, walk among the tomb towers, let the silence wrap around you. Look into the carved eyes of a Palmyrene who lived 2,000 years ago, and realize they are still here, still waiting, still watching. The island of forgotten shipwrecks. Along the edge of southern Africa, where the Namib Desert kisses the Atlantic Ocean, there is a stretch of coast so stark, so unforgiving, and so otherworldly, that sailors once called it the land God made in anger. Today, we know it as the Skeleton Coast, a place where the desert sands meet a restless sea, where fog rolls thick and heavy, and where the carcasses of ships rest like bones half buried in the earth. Imagine approaching this place from the sea. For days, the horizon is nothing but water and cloud, until suddenly, a wall of fog wraps around your vessel. The waves grow fierce, the winds whip cold and sharp, and before you know it, the coastline appears, a jagged line of dunes and breakers. There are no harbors here, no safe inlets, only danger. And for centuries, ships that ventured too close found themselves dashed against the shallows, torn apart by the unrelenting Atlantic. When you step onto the sands today, you walk into a graveyard. Shipwrecks lie scattered across the shore, their rusting hulls twisted, their timbers broken, their masts snapped like bones. Some sit tilted, half swallowed by sand. Others are little more than skeleton frames, their iron ribs jutting out of the earth. Time has not been kind, yet there is a strange beauty in their ruin. The ships look as if they are still trying to move, still trying to sail, but the desert has them in its grip, and it's not just one or two. Along this coast, hundreds of wrecks tell the same story, of ambition, of miscalculation, of despair. Portuguese explorers in the 15th century, German traders in the 19th, whaling vessels, cargo ships, fishing trawlers, all met their end here. Their journeys meant for distant markets and safe harbors ended instead in silence and sand. Picture the sailors who once stood on these decks. For them, wrecking here was not just the end of a voyage. It was the start of a slow, uncertain death. Because the Skeleton Coast is not just dangerous from the sea, it is deadly on land as well. Step off the beach, and you enter the Namib Desert, one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. Endless dunes, no rivers, no fresh water, no shade. To be shipwrecked here was to be stranded between two unforgiving worlds, the roaring sea on one side, the burning desert on the other. And yet life exists here. Alongside the wrecks, you find bones, the bleached remains of whales, seals, even the occasional elephant or lion that wandered too far into the desert. Nature itself leaves its skeletons beside the ships, as if to remind us that survival is always fragile here. The coast becomes a museum of mortality, each fragment telling a story of struggle and surrender. But look closer, and you also find resilience. Seals crowd the beaches in great colonies, their cries filling the fog. Desert-adapted lions prowl the dunes, hunting the seals when the opportunity comes. Oryx and jackals leave their tracks in the sand. Even in a place named for death, life carves its place, stubborn and defiant. And the wrecks themselves, they too live on in their way. Rust spreads across the iron, painting the ships in shades of orange and red, like slow-moving fire frozen in time. Wooden beams crack and splinter, yet still hold their form. Some wrecks have become home to birds, their cabins filled with nests. Others are markers for human memory, visited by travelers, photographed, whispered about in stories told beside campfires. One of the most famous is the wreck of the Edward Bolen, a German cargo ship stranded in 1909. Today, it sits far inland, nearly a kilometer from the ocean, as if it sailed into the desert itself. The shifting dunes carried the sea away, leaving the ship stranded in a sea of sand. When you see it, the Bolen looks like a ghost vessel still underway, its prow pointed forward, its shadow stretching long against the desert floor. Stand beside it in the evening, when the fog drifts low and the sand glows under the fading light, and you feel something uncanny. The ship is silent, but it feels alive, like a memory refusing to fade. The desert holds it gently, slowly burying it grain by grain, yet never completely erasing it. The Bolen seems to say, we are never entirely gone. There's a dreamlike quality to the Skeleton Coast. The fog rolls in thick every morning, blanketing the dunes, muting the world. Sounds are hushed, colors softened, everything reduced to pale sand, dark wrecks, and the distant roar of waves. Then, as the day warms, the fog lifts, and the coastline reveals itself again. Endless, shimmering, harsh, magnificent. Time itself feels strange here, stretched thin, caught between presence and absence, and perhaps that is why the Skeleton Coast lingers in human imagination. It is a place where the line between life and death, between sea and desert, between past and present, blurs. The ships here are not just relics, they are storytellers. They speak of human daring and human fragility. They remind us how small we are before the forces of nature, how easily our creations can become bones in the sand. Yet as you walk away, leaving the wrecks behind, you feel a quiet respect. These ships once carried people across oceans. They carried hopes, goods, letters, stories. Even broken, they continue their voyage, not across water, but across time. Anchored forever in the desert, they drift now through memory. So if you ever stand on the Skeleton Coast with fog at your feet and the Atlantic crashing nearby, pause by one of these wrecks. Place your hand on the rusted iron, on the weathered wood, and listen. The ship may be silent, but the sea is not. The wind carries whispers, and if you let yourself sink into the moment, you will hear it. The voices of forgotten sailors, the roar of waves that never rest, the heartbeat of a world that swallows and remembers. The Skeleton Coast is a graveyard, yes, but it is also a reminder. Nothing is ever truly forgotten, not ships, not people, not the dreams that carried them across the sea. Temples that drink the jungle. There is a temple deep in the Cambodian jungle where nature and stone are no longer enemies but partners. It is called Ta Prohm, though many who first see it think of it simply as the jungle temple. Unlike other monuments of Angkor, restored and polished to shine, Ta Prohm has been left half-claimed by the forest, its walls and courtyards woven with the roots of colossal trees. It is a place where silence hums, where the air is thick with damp earth and birdsong, and where every step feels like crossing into a dream. When you first approach, the jungle already tells the story. Tall trees rise overhead, their trunks impossibly wide, their canopies filtering the sunlight into soft green light. The air smells of moss, of wet leaves, of earth that has been turned, and turned again by centuries of rain, and then, between the trees, the stones appear. Tumbled walls, broken towers, doorways leading nowhere. At first glance it feels like ruin, but then you notice the roots. Enormous, pale roots that pour down the walls like waterfalls turned to wood. They slip into cracks, wrap around carvings, hold entire buildings in their embrace. Taprom is not a temple abandoned to destruction. It is a temple held, a temple kept, by the jungle itself. The stone and the tree have merged into something new. Half ruin, half living being. Inside, the corridors are narrow, the ceilings low, the stones damp and cool to the touch. Carvings still linger on the walls, apsaras dancing, lotus flowers blooming, gods watching with still eyes. But the roots weave among them, sometimes covering a figure entirely, sometimes cradling it like a parent's hand. Imagine running your fingertips along the grooves of a carving, only to feel the smooth skin of a root growing across it. You cannot tell where one story ends and another begins. Taprom was built in the late 12th century, under the great king Jayavarman VII, as a Buddhist monastery and university. Once, thousands of monks walked these halls. Once, prayers rose with the smoke of incense, and bells rang in the courtyards. Imagine it then, golden roofs glinting under the sun, walls painted bright, statues gleaming. The jungle kept its distance then, pushed back by human hands. But time does not surrender so easily. When Angkor fell, when the people left, the jungle returned. Patiently, silently, it grew back through cracks, seated itself in forgotten courtyards, pressed root against stone, until the temple and the forest were one. There is something humbling about standing here. Many ruins in the world show us human achievement. Columns, pyramids, fortresses. But Taprom shows us a partnership, a surrender, and an embrace. The trees do not simply crush the temple, they hold it, even keep it standing in places where the stone alone might have fallen. The temple, in turn, gives the trees their shape, stone walls guiding the way, roots flow, doorways framing trunks. It is less a ruin than a living sculpture, grown over centuries by two forces, the hand of man and the hand of nature. As you wander, the jungle speaks around you. The buzz of cicadas, the calls of unseen birds, the rustle of leaves in a breeze that barely reaches the ground. Sometimes a monkey skitters across a wall, pausing to look back at you with curious eyes. Sometimes a gecko darts across a carving, vanishing into a crack. Every sound reminds you, you are the visitor here. The temple belongs to the forest now. And yet, despite the weight of centuries, Taprom does not feel mournful. It feels alive. Its walls glow softly in the filtered light, moss painting them green, lichen blooming like constellations. Step into one of its courtyards, and the silence deepens until even your breath feels loud. And then, look up, a tree, centuries old, rising from the very heart of the temple, its roots spreading outward like fingers through every wall, as if drinking the life of the stone itself. People often describe Taprom as romantic, and it is. But it is not the romance of beauty alone. It is the romance of survival, of endurance, of two powers, stone and tree, locked in embrace for centuries. Some call it destruction, others call it rebirth. Perhaps it is both. Stand still. Let your hand rest on the stone warmed by the sun, and close your eyes. You can almost hear it, the chant of monks, distant yet lingering, the ringing of a temple bell, soft but insistent, the whisper of leaves moving above. Time folds here, and for a moment, the centuries collapse. You are no longer just a visitor in ruins. You are part of a living temple, where every breath of wind, every call of bird, every root's slow growth is part of the prayer, and when the sun begins to set, the temple glows differently. The roots, pale and twisting, shine gold in the last light. Shadows stretch across the courtyards, and the jungle grows louder, the call of insects rising, the rustle of creatures waking. It is then, in twilight, that Taprom feels most alive, not as a relic of the past, but as something still unfolding, still breathing. Taprom teaches us something that few monuments can. It shows us that even what we build with ambition and care is never truly separate from the world around it. We may raise temples, carve stone, write history, but in the end, the earth always writes its own lines. And sometimes, as in Taprom, those lines are not erasure, but poetry. When you walk away, the temple lingers. You see it in your mind's eye, the roots embracing stone, the stone supporting roots, a balance neither fragile nor forced. And you realize, the jungle has not destroyed Taprom, it has completed it. The sacred mountain of Uluru. In the heart of Australia, far from the coastlines and the cities, there rises a mountain that is not quite like any other. It is not a jagged peak, it is not a range of many summits. It is one single stone, massive and unbroken, rising from the desert as if it had grown straight out of the earth's heart. This is Uluru, sometimes called Ayer's Rock. Though for the Anangu people, the traditional custodians of this land, Uluru is not a name of convenience. It is a name of belonging, a name woven into stories that stretch back tens of thousands of years. From a distance, Uluru looks almost unreal. The desert around it is flat and wide, stretching endlessly beneath the blue Australian sky. The land is scattered with spinifex grasses, desert oaks, and red sand that glows like embers under the sun. And then, suddenly, there it is, a single mountain of stone, 350 meters high, nearly 10 kilometers around, rising with no companion, as if the earth itself had taken one deep breath and lifted this block of sandstone skyward. As you approach, the color shifts. At dawn, Uluru glows a soft pink, as though the stone itself is waking. By midday it blazes with the red of rust and fire, so bright it seems almost to burn in the desert heat. At sunset, it softens again, deep orange, crimson, sometimes violet as the sky darkens. The rock is alive with light, never the same color twice, always in motion though it never moves. But Uluru is not only a wonder of geology, it is a place of story, of sacred meaning. For the Anangu, Uluru is not merely a rock, it is a living presence, bound to the Chukurpa, the dreaming, the great tapestry of creation stories that explain how the world came to be and how people should live within it. Every curve, every cave, every scar on Uluru's surface carries a story. Look closely, and you see shapes etched into the stone, gullies that mark where ancestral beings fought, caves that hold paintings passed down for generations, hollows where water gathers after the rains, each one tied to myth and memory. To walk around Uluru is to walk through a storybook written not in words but in stone. There is the place where the Mala people, in the Dreamtime, began their ceremonies before being chased by enemies. There is the scar left by the great snake Kunya, who fought here to protect her people. There are caves where children once learned, painted with ochre images that survive even after centuries. Each site is part of the whole, each story part of the living presence that is Uluru. The silence around the rock is profound. You can hear your own footsteps on the sand, the wind brushing through desert grasses, the occasional call of a bird circling overhead. At night, the desert cools, the stars blaze brighter than most of us ever see them, and Uluru looms in shadow, dark, massive, quiet. It is in those hours, under the vast dome of stars, that you feel most deeply the weight of its age. Scientists say Uluru began forming nearly 500 million years ago, its sandstone pressed and lifted by ancient seas. The Anangu say its stories are just as old, reaching back to the time when the world was shaped. In either telling, Uluru feels eternal, and yet, Uluru is not untouchable. Rain sometimes streaks its surface, forming dark channels that look like rivers running down its sides. In the wet season, water gathers in pools at its base, bringing sudden bursts of life. Frogs croak, plants bloom, insects swarm, birds arrive in flocks. The desert, usually so quiet, becomes noisy and alive, and Uluru itself seems to breathe with it. In the dry season, it returns to silence. But even then, life remains hidden, waiting, enduring. For many years, visitors came to climb Uluru, leaving footprints on its back. But for the Anangu, this was painful, like walking on a sacred being. In 2019, after decades of discussion and respect for the custodian's wishes, the climb was finally closed. Now people come not to conquer the rock, but to walk around it, to sit with it, to see it as the Anangu have always seen it, not as a mountain to be scaled, but as a story to be listened to. Imagine yourself there at sunrise, sitting at the base, the sand still cool beneath you. The first light touches the rock, and slowly it shifts from shadow to fire. The desert wakes, birds begin to call, insects hum, and Uluru glows like a giant ember in the heart of the land. You feel small here, but not in a way that diminishes. You feel small in a way that connects you, as if the vastness of this stone is not about power, but about belonging. At sunset, the opposite happens. The heat fades, the light softens, and Uluru glows once more in its final blaze before the night. People gather quietly, watching as the rock shifts color minute by minute, until it fades into shadow, and then the stars rise, the Milky Way sweeping across the sky, so clear that it feels as though the heavens themselves have lowered to meet the earth. Uluru teaches us patience. It does not shout, it does not rush. It simply stands, as it has stood for millions of years, holding stories, holding silence, holding time itself. To visit it is not to see something spectacular for a moment and move on. It is to sit, to watch, to listen, and to understand that some places are alive in ways we cannot measure. When you leave, the desert seems wider, the sky taller, the silence deeper. But in your mind, Uluru remains, glowing, silent, immense, a mountain that is also a story, a presence that lingers, and you carry with you the knowledge that somewhere in the heart of Australia, a single stone rises from the earth, not just as rock, but as memory, as teacher, as sacred mountain. The island where time froze. Far off the coast of Ireland, where the Atlantic rolls and crashes with endless strength, there rises a rock. Jagged, steep and sharp against the horizon. It does not look welcoming. Waves slam at its base, seabirds scream above, and the cliffs climb almost straight from the sea. This is Skellig Michael, an island that seems less like a piece of earth, and more like a fragment of another world, torn from time and set adrift in the ocean. The first sight of it is unforgettable. Imagine sailing across gray-green waters, the coastline of Ireland fading behind you, the sky heavy with clouds that shift and open in sudden shafts of light. And then, out there in the distance, this strange pyramid of rock appears, its twin peaks stabbing upward, its sides streaked with green where seabirds nest and grasses cling. From far away it looks lifeless, almost forbidding, as though daring you to approach. But as you draw nearer, you realize it holds secrets left by those who chose this rock as home over 1,000 years ago. The monks who came here did not choose an easy path. They were early Christians, seekers of silence and closeness to God. To them, Skellig Michael was not a fortress against the sea, but a staircase to heaven. In the 6th century, they rowed across treacherous waters in small wooden boats, carrying only what they could, and climbed onto this rock. What they built here, against all odds, still survives. High up, hundreds of stone steps rise from the landing point at the edge of the sea. These steps, weathered by 1,000 years of storms, twist and climb until you feel you are leaving the human world behind. And at the top, nestled against the cliff, you find it, a monastery of stone beehive huts, tiny chapels and terraces built from stacked stones without mortar. The huts are round, their roofs sloping like cones, their interiors just large enough for a monk to sleep, pray, and endure the long winters. They stand like little shells clinging to the rock, perfectly shaped to keep out the rain and the wind. To live here was to live on the edge of survival. Food came from the sea, fish, seabirds, their eggs. Rainwater was collected in cisterns. Firewood had to be scarce, carried from the mainland when it could be found. The wind howled through the stone walls, storms battered the cliffs, and isolation was constant. Yet the monks believed this hardship brought them closer to the divine. The Atlantic was their cloister, the sky was their cathedral, and the silence of the rock was their prayer. Even now, standing among the stone huts, you can feel that silence. The wind rushes, the birds cry, but beneath it all there is a deep stillness, as if the island itself remembers the centuries of whispered prayers. Look down from the monastery terraces, and the ocean spreads out in every direction, vast and endless. No town, no road, no field, only water, sky, and stone. It is easy to understand why people say Skellig Michael feels like a place where time itself has paused. Legends cling to the island. Some say Saint Michael himself, the archangel, guards it, which gave the rock its name. Others believe it was chosen because it stood at the very edge of the known world, a place where earth met the mysteries of heaven. The monks who lived here lasted for centuries, until storms, raids, and changing times finally drew them back to the mainland in the 12th century. But the stone huts they left behind remain intact, as though waiting for them to return. Climbing those steps today is like traveling backward. Your feet touch the same stones carved 1,000 years ago. The same seabirds wheel overhead. The same salt spray stings your face. The same winds push against your shoulders. And when you step inside one of the beehive huts, the walls curve around you, close and sheltering. It is dark, simple, and silent. You realize this was once a monk's entire world. 4 stone walls, the open sky, and a faith strong enough to endure isolation on the edge of the sea. Skellig Michael has always inspired awe, but in recent years it became known to many who had never heard its name. Filmmakers used it as the site of a hermit's refuge in the Star Wars saga, because where else on Earth looks so much like another planet, so ancient, so untouchable? And yet, even with that fame, the essence of the island remains the same. Visitors come not only for its cinematic beauty, but for the quiet, humbling strangeness of standing in a place where monks once prayed at the edge of the known world. The sea, of course, is never far away. Storms still lash the island, waves still climb the rocks, and sometimes landings are impossible for weeks. The island keeps its distance, reminding us that it was never meant for ease or comfort. It was meant for endurance, for patience, for faith. At sunset, the ocean glows gold, the stone huts turn shadowed, and the seabirds return in flocks, filling the sky with their cries before settling into silence. Imagine a monk standing there 1,000 years ago, watching the same sunset, hearing the same wings beating, feeling the same chill as night rose from the sea. Nothing has changed. On Skellig Michael, time has indeed stood still. When you leave, sailing back across the restless waters, you keep looking over your shoulder. The island shrinks, turns dark against the horizon, and then finally fades. But in your mind it lingers, a jagged rock where men built eternity out of stone, a place where time froze, a monastery balanced between heaven and earth, the singing stones of Karnak. On the western edge of France, in the rolling fields of Brittany, there stretches a landscape that seems almost impossible. Thousands of stones, some small, some towering, stand in rows, stretching for kilometers across the countryside. They are not scattered by chance. They are placed, aligned, ordered in ways that suggest careful design, and yet, they are older than written history, older than the pyramids of Egypt, older even than Stonehenge. These are the Karnak stones, and to walk among them is to step into a mystery that hums with echoes of the past. The first impression is overwhelming. Imagine standing on a grassy plain, the air damp and cool with Atlantic breezes, the sky low and shifting with clouds. Before you rise hundreds of gray stones, each one weathered, lichen-covered, ancient. They stand shoulder to shoulder in rows so straight they seem to march into the horizon. From above, the alignments stretch like rivers of stone, lines bending and curving across the land as if drawn by a giant hand. There are more than 3,000 of them, each one hauled into place 5,000 or 6,000 years ago by people whose names, whose languages, and whose stories we will never fully know. Why here? Why in rows? Why so many? These are the questions that haunt the fields of Karnak. Archaeologists have studied them for centuries. Some say they were built as astronomical markers, pointing to the rising and setting of the sun, or mapping the stars. Others believe they were sacred sites for rituals we can only guess at. And still others wonder if they were simply about power, an enormous effort meant to say, we are here. We can move mountains, we can shape the land itself. But when you stand among them, questions fade, and something else takes over. There is a presence here, a strange quiet. The stones don't just stand, they seem to listen. On windy days, the air rushes between them, whistling, humming, almost singing. The locals once whispered that the stones could move, that they were ancient soldiers frozen into rock by magic. At dawn or dusk, when the light is low, they do seem to shift, shadows stretching, shapes changing, as though they might step forward at any moment. Some of the stones are small, barely reaching your waist. Others are massive, taller than a person, heavier than a car, weighing many tons. And yet they were placed with care, as if each had a role to play. Some form long rows, alignments that stretch for over a kilometer. Others gather in circles, like ancient meeting places. Still others form burial chambers, stone dolmens where the dead were laid to rest. Together they create not just a field of stones, but a landscape of meaning, a map written in rock, pointing to something we still do not fully understand. The people who built them lived in a world without metal tools, without wheels as we know them, without machines. To move even one of these stones would have required dozens, perhaps hundreds of people, ropes of twisted fiber, wooden sledges, sheer determination, and yet they moved thousands of them. It was not just labor, it was vision, it was belief. Whatever they sought to mark, time, gods, ancestors, the stars, it was worth generations of work. Legends grew in the centuries that followed. Some say Merlin himself, the wizard of Arthurian tales, raised these stones with his magic. Others whisper they are Roman legions turned to stone by a saint. Farmers once believed they carried power. Some stones were said to heal, others to protect, others to bring fertility to the land. Even today, visitors walk among them quietly, as if afraid to disturb something still alive. And maybe they are alive, in memory, in mystery, in the way they hold time itself. For 5,000 or 6,000 years, these stones have stood through storms, wars, plows, and roads. Villages grew around them, fields were planted between them, and still they remain, patient and silent. When you touch one, the stone is cold, rough, but strangely grounding. You realize it has been touched by countless hands before yours, each one wondering the same thing. Why are you here? What are you saying? At night, under the stars, the mystery deepens. The rows of stones glow pale in moonlight, casting long shadows across the grass. The Milky Way arcs overhead, and you cannot help but wonder if the builders were mapping this very sky. The stones and the stars seem to speak to each other, across millennia. You stand there in the quiet and feel the pull of time, backward, outward, into a world where myth and reality blur. Perhaps that is the true secret of Karnak. Not that we will ever solve it, but that it keeps us asking. It invites us to listen, to imagine, to lean into the silence and hear the faint music of ages past. The stones do not answer, but they sing in their own way, through wind, through shadow, through the mystery they refuse to give up. When you leave Karnak, the image stays with you, row after row of ancient stones, marching into the distance, singing a song only the earth remembers, and you realize that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be felt, to be carried, like a tune you can't quite forget.